Hello friends, welcome back to my corner of the internet. My name is Cait and today we are going to be prepping for my PhD. For those that don't know, I am a PhD student in early modern English literature at Trinity College in Dublin. I have just completed my Masters in Literature and Arts at the University of Oxford. Represent. And I'm going to be talking about prepping for my PhD. Here I have just attended a workshop with our Accepted Society PhD coaches, Polly and Khalia, where they did a session on starting strong. It was live streamed on YouTube, so I will leave that link in the description box below, and I will also leave a link to PhD if this is a program that you feel like you might be interested. The PhD program is absolutely fantastic as it's a sub part of Accepted Society and it provides more dedicated support and resources for PhD students, and I am so thrilled to be enrolled in this as actually a student rather than running it per se. And the PhD coaches, Polly and Khalia, are just absolutely fantastic. And the session on starting strong was amazing, absolutely amazing. I took so many notes on it, and I figured that I would go through that because I think it's helpful to kind of get the sense of preparing yourself for a big adjustment like a PhD or like a master's or any kind of change like that. There's certainly things that I know I'm going to be adjusting to, not working, and just being able to focus on my research and on Accepted. So that's kind of the plan for this video. I figured we would just talk through this. If you are not aware, I am unofficially starting my PhD at the moment, or I've unofficially started my PhD. I am awaiting my transcripts from Oxford, which should come this month, and then I'll be able to fully register myself. But I have actually been meeting with my supervisor in the meantime, and our plan in terms of research for the rest of the year is to submerge myself in the Fairy Queen. For those that don't know, my research is based on Edmund Spenser's The Fairy Queen. I look at the villainous female characters within the Fairy Queen and look at the images that are associated with them. And so I have done that for my master's dissertation. I did it for book 1. There's 6 books in the Fairy Queen, so I am getting into reading the Fairy Queen again. And I haven't read it, I think, cover to cover in a really, really long time, and I am really enjoying it. So that is literally what I'm going to be doing for the next 2-3 months, is reading the Fairy Queen cover to cover and making notes and highlights and all that kind of thing. So it's really exciting. I'm really enjoying it. It's interesting now because as a part of my personal curriculum, if you haven't seen that video, I will link it here. As a part of my personal curriculum, I'm also reading things like Ovid's Metamorphoses, Dante's Inferno. This is actually part of my 2025 TBR, and I am loving this so much. If you want to see my thoughts on that, I put up posts on the progress in my personal curriculum on my Substack. All the information will be linked in the description box below. And all of this kind of, I want to call it like warm-up research. It's still very key research, but it is kind of like warming up research. And so, yeah, I think getting into that kind of research is really exciting. It's starting to get me thinking about like the philosophy of poetry and its intention. Obviously, there's a huge amount of that in Spenser, in Dante, in Ovid, even in Philip Sidney. Obviously, his defense of poesy was one of the most foundational pieces of like poetry philosophy. And so there's a lot that I kind of want to read. My supervisor also suggested that I read Paradise Lost by Milton, which I've never read, surprisingly. So he suggested an edition to me that has all of Milton's key text. He loves Milton, but it's quite pricey, so maybe it's a Christmas present. So let's see. But what I did actually want to talk about for the next couple of minutes is just my PhD anchor points. And this is what Polly and Khalia were taking us through in the starting strong session. Essentially, we went through, I think it was 5 or 6 anchor points for your PhD. And so that's what I want to talk us through today. Okay, so I'm going back in the notes that I made during the session, and I think the most incredible thing that this session helped me realize is that there is a fantastic opportunity at this point in time to actually create those sustainable, supportive systems for my research kind of going forward into this next phase, but that center on ensuring I am at the best place that I can be, ensuring that my well-being is looked after. Having worked full-time and studied part-time and run a business and all kinds of things, like I have been on the verge of burnout and probably burnt out so many times. And so it's really important that I look at setting these boundaries and setting these structures, or putting these structures in place, rather than going on this journey and realizing that I am just contributing to really, really bad habits. So the first sort of anchor point that they talk about is navigating the first year reality and acknowledging, I suppose, that there is this intense transition that is often very emotionally complex, and it brings a whole lot of feelings with it. Feelings of excitement, feelings of uncertainty, feelings of overwhelm. And the most wonderful thing that I kind of got from the workshop was that you are, as a first year PhD student, you are becoming the researcher that you want to be. There is no single PhD journey that is identical. Everything is very much dependent on you and your research and your work, and it is okay to realize that you are in that process of becoming, rather than feeling behind or feeling like an imposter. And when you're in this space, the important thing is to find your research North Star. This helps you kind of connect with a deep sense of purpose, curiosity, or passion that led you to the research program. And this really, really resonated with me, because in our researchers program as a part of Accepted Society, we talk about this idea of self-centered research, which basically covers around the idea that you are the best person to do the research that you are doing, and creating that sense of personal connection with your research allows you to be driven from within and to pull on your own internal power from within when you hit those emotional bumps or those obstacles in your research. And so establishing what that research North Star is for you can take some time. It can take some reflection. You might know it already. For me, I know what it is, and I've journaled about it so many times. And allowing yourself to have that deep reflection about what that North Star is just so important. And for me, when I look at that, I look at what led me here, what questions or curiosities are alive in you right now, and what excites you about what you're learning and the possibilities of your research. I come to this conclusion that for me, the research is insanely reflective of a personal experience. And I don't really want to go into this in too much detail, but understanding the depth of those feminine images in a piece of work that is so influential, that has been the cornerstone of poetry throughout the years and has been the cornerstone of literary study throughout the years, really resonates so strongly with me. And there are very clear moments in my life, in my journey, that I remember when, for example, I was talking to my master's supervisor, Lynn, about the Fairy Queen and about Era, and she was so enthusiastic and she encouraged me to apply for the master's. And then when I read particular books like Eve Bites Back by Anna Baer, or A Woman in the Picture by Catherine McCormack, I've talked about these texts so much on my channel, but they were so influential. Sarah Clegg's Woman's Law, all of these were so influential in making me think about the impact that these images in a influential text have had on history. And when I think about that, there's almost like this warmth, this glow that exists in my heart and in my chest, and I'm driven by that. So for me, those are that's a vaguely defined North Star of my research. The second thing that they talked about in the workshop was setting a sustainable rhythm and having the focus be on progress over productivity. And they had a number of asks for us to look at, noticing our energy, choosing anchors, setting boundaries, scheduling rest and recovery, and reflecting and readjusting. And for me, this has been really an interesting exercise, because I have spent the last week in my sort of chaos to calm week, which I'll link here. It was the video just preceding this one. But I spent the time reflecting on my own personal rhythms and figuring out what I needed to put together for my PhD and for my research plan. And I have essentially come up with a ideal work week. Now, this is very much subject to change. I know that. I have scheduled in 2 days off per week, one on the weekend, one during the week. I have selected my anchors, things that I know make me feel like I am grounded. For me, those are and will continue to be my 5 a.m. club sessions that I run at Accepted Society. Boundaries, I've really been focused on putting these together and making sure that I stick to them. I am a recovering people pleaser, and so saying yes to a whole lot of things all the time is something that I am notoriously bad at. And so one of my biggest boundaries is actually knowing what to say yes to and knowing when to say no. As I say, I've been keeping a journal over the last couple of weeks about noticing my energy. I think that was the most important thing, is I kind of noticed when my energy was at its highest. I noticed when my energy was at its lowest. I noticed when I was naturally gravitating towards doing particular things. So for example, my most creative time to write for my Substack, like my creative writing outlet, is always after dinner. That just seems to kind of be my time of writing creatively. While studying, I do so much better first thing in the morning rather than in the afternoon. Afternoons are usually like my better time for meetings and things like that. When I start classes and things like that in the new year, that might change up. But I think for me, just having a idea of what that looks like is super duper helpful. And that kind of leads me on to the next point and the next sort of key anchor that Polly and Khalia talked about, which is building your independent support system. And this is the community around you. And I can absolutely say that building a supportive relationship with your peers, with your community, like an accepted society, these have all been key success factors for me. I could not have done my master's without accepted, and now that I'm a part of the PhD program, I know that I'm not going to be able to do this PhD without them. But the one thing that I really appreciate in this workshop is actually this idea that you need to connect with a community that is outside of academia. One thing I feel like really suffered with my master's while I was working is that I had very little time for friends and for family and that kind of thing, and they were always the first ones that got sort of sidelined. And my husband has been super duper supportive. My friends have been so supportive. My family's been really supportive. But I know that I could be better. I could be a better friend. I could be a better wife. And so there is a big part of me that wants to go into this next phase really keeping that in mind and really making sure that I am showing up for my friends and my family in ways that I never did last time. And finally, I really want to bring a couple of tangible bits into my sort of daily habits that have come from the community. And the one thing in particular that I want to bring forward is writing from day one. And this is where like my Substack has come in, my personal curriculum has come in. It's also why I have launched the November writing month within Accepted Society, where it's kind of meant to replace the NaNoWriMo month of November as the writing month. And whatever form of writing that is, whether it's, writing my journal or writing notes from my readings or whatever the case may be, that is absolutely something that I want to bring forward, because I wrote a Substack article about this, which I will leave linked down below. But essentially, writing has become a part of my thinking process. And I have become so reliant on that physical act of writing so much that I want to kind of continue to bring that into my daily routine. And then the most important thing, I think, is to celebrate every single step along the way, every small win, every big win, every bit of progress that you make. And I am notoriously bad at this. I really brush my accomplishments under the rug, and I want to stop doing that. I want to celebrate those things, reward myself for doing that, whether it's, going out for a coffee or treating myself to a book or whatever the case may be. Those little celebrations are going to become a big part of my progress over perfection sort of routine. This has been a lot of talking, but I hope that by listening to me kind of go through this alongside watching that workshop for first year PhD students, you will find some incredibly helpful resources. And if you are a new PhD student like myself and think that you would benefit from the kind of support that PhD is offering, I will leave all the information linked down below. And yeah, that is kind of the mental planning prep that I am doing to set myself up for my PhD. I have had a request for prepping for PhD around like my technology and the systems that I use and my organization that I use. I love this. I love these kind of videos, so I will absolutely be doing that in my next video. So if you would like to see that, please subscribe and support this channel. It means more to me than you know, especially at this point now that I am no longer working. But thank you so much for being here, and hopefully I will see you in that next video. Thanks everyone. Bye.